Have you ever felt God calling you to step out for Him, but have been so afraid? Or maybe you have stepped out in ministry, but you wrestle with a secret fear that you're going to miss it or mess it up. Well, today's guest, Lori Wilhite, knows what that struggle is like, and she's going to share her own journey to freedom and the inner healing God brought her as she simply embraced God's call on her life. Whether you're called to ministry or not, I know you're going to be blessed by this conversation. Hey there, Lori. Welcome to the Living Room Podcast. I am so honored that you are here.
Oh my goodness. It's so great to be here. Thank you so much just for the time and the opportunity to get to hang out with you for a little bit.
Well, I have been longing to talk to you ever since you started the ministry, Leading and Loving It. And as a pastor's wife, I know I've been hungry for resources, and you and your team have done such a beautiful job. But also, I had the privilege many years ago speaking in the Las Vegas area. I went to your church. I think it was the first weekend of December. And I remember, first of all, what God has done through you and Judd is just so beautiful. 23 locations, you guys, internationally and nationally. And I just learned 12 of those are in prisons. Oh my goodness. That could be a whole conversation.
We absolutely love it. Who would have thought two Texas kids would end up in Sin City? And we absolutely love getting to partner with God in the work He's doing in the lives of people here. It's a joy.
Well, I'll never forget walking in, and I had actually went up to the balcony area and sat over on the corner, and immediately the presence of God met me in that place. It was one of those spiritual moments with Jesus that I'll never forget. And so you and Judd have a really special place in my heart for that as well. You've kind of pastored me, at least for that little moment, in a really profound way. But I would love to rewind and just hear your personal story, how you met Jesus, how ministry has unfolded for you, and just even what led up to leading and loving it.
You know what? I grew up in a Christian home. My parents, neither in ministry, but loved Jesus a lot. And but somehow my brother and I both are in ministry. So I think just shows probably just what our home was like, just very saturated in kind of the grace and mercy of Jesus, but not in an overbearing kind of way. But neither of us probably knew what we were getting into when it came to ministry. But when I was in college, I really had finally kind of taken my faith as my own and embraced it, not as my parents' faith or even, kind of the faith of an awesome church that we went to, but as my own. And that is when I met this very cute preacher. And I just absolutely fell head over heels in love with him and would have married him if he was flipping burgers. But it just so happened he was leading people to Jesus, which was also a good thing. And we became a team together. We've been doing ministry together for like 27 years. And I wish I could say it's always been amazing, but it's had its ups and downs. And I think as just a very young, I was 21 when we got married, and really I was still in college. I was still trying to kind of figure myself out. And our very sweet pastor at our church, Judd, asked him what he thought about asking me to marry him. And his response was, "Judd, your wife will make you or break you in ministry." And at 21, that was a lot for me to swallow. And all I focused on was the fact that maybe I could break Judd's ministry. And I was terrified because I knew God had clearly called him. I knew he was doing exactly what he needed to be doing. What I was so afraid of is that I just wasn't so sure about me, that maybe God had made a mistake with me. And so I spent the first probably 10 years maybe of our marriage and our ministry together being really, I just really struggled with insecurity, feeling ill-equipped, feeling unqualified for what I was doing. It felt like an imposter in a lot of ways, and which kind of culminated in about a 2-year long depression of I just had lived in such, I don't know, such a cage that I had built for myself. Afraid that I might say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, or I don't know. I don't know what I thought I was going to do, but that somehow I was just going to wreck Judd's ministry. And he never felt that way. He always thought that was crazy, but it just had gotten in my head. And as God started to put me back on my feet again and started to kind of turn the lights back on in my life, and I started kind of to learn to walk confidently in the calling he had before me, is really when things started to turn to the positive. And you know what? I realized that my pastor did have a front part of that statement. It wasn't just that your wife can break you in ministry. It was that he can make you. And when I started to shift my focus to like, what would it look like if I started to focus on that side of things, that like I can help Judd, I can be a great teammate for Judd, we can work together. And that was a really transformational moment, not just in my life and in kind of my leadership life, but also in our marriage and in our ministry together. And so out of all of that pain and junk and depression and discouragement and all of that, God actually turned my heart toward other ministry people like me who probably thought they were the only pastor's wife who struggled and the only ministry gal who wondered if she was good enough to be doing what God had put before her. And so I just thought, well, I'll just see if somebody else needs to know it's not just them. And I decided to start leading and loving it. And 15 years ago, and it's just been the best ride of my life.
Over 20,000 leaders that you
Right.
and your team are ministering to in so many different arenas. We're going to have links in the show notes, you guys, because you really do need to check this out. But I'd kind of like to drill down just a little bit. I think of so many women out there that maybe they're not ministry women, but you just described their life, that feeling of inadequacy. Or maybe they're on the other side of the spectrum, which I kind of came from, where I was just trying so hard and doing all the things and yet feeling so empty and dry and like nothing was ever enough.
Right.
So I know I had my own like awakening, like where God sort of did something where it was no longer so much about ministry as much about my identity and my security in his love and what he'd done for me. And I'd love to hear, could you unpack a little bit of your journey with Jesus during that time of just kind of almost, it sounds like coming alive, coming out of that tomb of fear into some light?
Right. Yeah. You know, the real turning point for me was in the security line at the Miami airport. And I was standing in that line with a friend trying to get through TSA, and I had all my bags, and I just was having this moment with her, like this Moses-y moment of like, who am I? I'm not qualified to do this. Like, why? Like, my voice doesn't matter. Like, I had all these, like, this moment with her. And I remember she kind of threw her bags on the ground and turned around to me and said, Lori, I just got to ask you, do you believe God's sovereign or not? And I was like, yes, that's the easiest church answer. I know the answer is supposed to be yes. I said, yes, of course. And she said, then do you not believe he knew what he was doing when God chose you to be Judd's wife? Do you think he didn't know what he was doing when God chose you to be the mom of your kids, the pastor's wife at your church, the leader of this ministry? Do you think he didn't know what he was doing, or do you actually believe he's sovereign? And I was way slower to answer that. I just thought I thought I'm gonna need probably a couple of days to like really sit and soak in that. And I did. I for probably a week, I just really marinated in that question. Do I believe God's sovereign? Do I think he knows what he's doing? Because if answer is yes, then I have got to rest in the call he's placed on my life instead of feeling like I'm constantly struggling against it. And so once I finally got to the yes answer to that question on my own, over my life, over my calling, over my family, over our ministry, that is when things really started to transform. Because once you really rest in the sovereignty of God, now all of a sudden you have a confidence that isn't based on you, but is fully based in. It isn't, you have a power that isn't based on like anything you can summon up after a good long nap. It's really about the power of God in you and working through you. And once I really started to embrace that in my life, everything really started to change for me. And so really now it's just been a mission of sharing that moment with other people. Like I can't drag everybody down to the security line at the Miami airport, but I do feel like I can set my hands on the shoulders of women and say, do you believe God knows what he's doing? Do you believe God knows what he's doing when he chose you as a mom, as a wife, as a worker, as a daughter, as a friend, as a whatever? And then if the answer is yes to that question, now what? Now what are we going to do? Now how are we going to walk with our head high? Now how are we going to, step confidently into our purpose? Now how are we going to like just let a joy come in and infuse us from the inside out? Now how are we going to walk stronger in what he's asked us to do? And so it was really that moment. And then, I'm like a slow learner. I feel like God has had to bring that same lesson around to me every few months. He'll be like, do you still think I'm sovereign? Because here we go again. I'm like, yes, yep, I do. And so it has really kind of been the question over my life for the last 15 years probably is, do I trust God's sovereignty? Do I trust him? And if I do, then I've got to walk in it.
That's so powerful. That is so powerful. I'm listening to your story, and Satan accented you could break his ministry. Satan used you've got to make his ministry with me. And so driven, like we've got to be successful. We've got to do big things for Jesus. And the Lord just confounded everything that I tried to make happen. And so for me, it was, do you trust that this is my church, that this is my work, and that you just get to partner with me, that it isn't all up to you? Success or failure, it doesn't depend, which is kind of the flip side of the same lie that he used on you. Success or failure is up to you. And don't you think that's what the enemy loves to do, is just somehow, even us Jesus girls who want to love and serve him, where can I put the wedge? Where can I plant the lie? And as you've been working with these women over all the years, I think the one thing that's so unique that you've probably discovered is there are as many kind of flavors of pastors' wives and ministry women as there are individuals. There are some who feel called. Like I know 15 years of age, God called me to be a pastor's wife. And so that kind of became my driving force. But then you've got the other end of the spectrum where this poor woman married this guy, in fact, I just talked to a woman who 40 years ago married a guy. He was a businessman. They had a wonderful life. And suddenly he got called by God. And she's like, what the world? I didn't plan on this life. And so this concept of going, you're sovereign, God, this is not a mistake. I don't feel qualified. I maybe don't even want to do this. How do we get past the resistance or the fear or the hurt? Because let's just be honest, there's a lot of hurt in ministry that has shut down some ministry women. How do we lead and actually love it?
Oh, that's like the $1,000,000 question, isn't it? I think if we're just honest, there are times where we're leading and we're liking it pretty good. And then there are times where we're leading and we're loathing it because it's really painful or something crazy's happened or our best friend left the church or whatever the case may be. And I think the goal is to get to the place of actually loving it. Ministry is I mean, there's definitely tough things about it, no doubt about it, but there's so many beautiful things. I mean, we get a front row seat to the most amazing life transformations. It is an honor to get to be like the last link in a chain in someone's life that links them to Jesus. There's nothing better. There is really nothing better. I think sometimes we get a little like caught up in this is my sacrifice for God to be in ministry. I think about like when you think about Prince William and Kate when they got married, like there were people scrubbing floors. There were people like cleaning the horses and baking the cakes, and probably millions. I don't know how many people were involved in that wedding. Millions of people, right? And what an honor it would have been, right? To mop the floors of the cathedral or to bake the cake or to get the carriage ready. Like, what an honor to get to serve in that moment. I bet you none of them felt like it was a sacrifice, but an honor. How much more so should we, getting to serve the King of Kings, feel like it is an honor, not a sacrifice? Um, the truth is, God could get his work done through anyone. He chooses you, he chooses me. I don't always get it. I have question marks over it sometimes, but it's an honor. It's an honor to get to be used by God. And so I think sometimes it's just a shift, a perspective shift in realizing that there's some tough things, but this is not a sacrifice. This is a joy. This is an honor that we get to be part of people meeting Jesus, growing to know Jesus, following him in their lives. Like what an honor for us to get to do. And when you change your perspective, it does help the hard things. It doesn't make them go away. There's still hurts and hardships that we go through, but we go through them with a different sense of hope.
I love that. Well, I think if we can get past the lie that we're not enough or it's all up to us, I think for me, one of the freeing things was to realize, oh, I don't have to be anyone's Messiah. That's Jesus's job.
Right, right.
What has been some breakthrough moments for you that besides that, because the God sovereign is so massive, but maybe those moments where, I mean, let's just be honest, you can get really disillusioned. You can be working really hard. I think of that pastor's wife in a small church and working so hard and showing up faithfully. And yet there's not a lot to show for it. There aren't multiple campuses internationally. And then we can kind of question, well, am I doing it wrong? Or is God really good? I just would be interested to find out, have there been some shift moments in your life or some shift moments that you've witnessed in some of the women that you guys have in your cohorts?
Yeah, I mean, my mind is flooded with like 5 different things right now. Let me say this. The struggle I've had personally in the last few months is something that I've struggled on and off with over the years. And I find a lot of ministry people do, which is like the comparison game. We compare our ministry to their ministry. I compare my impact to their impact. I compare like whatever, or like the fact that their kids are eating their vegetables and mine are like gagging over them or whatever. Like we have all the comparisons. So I open up Instagram and their house is clean and mine is a wreck, whatever. So we have all these comparisons that we do in life, leadership, and all the things. And I had been really working on something for Leading and Loving It. We had been praying about it for like 9 months. We've been planning. We get it ready to launch. We launch it. We're so excited about it. Like a week later, this ministry gal, someone who I respect a ton with a massive platform, launches almost the same thing. And I've no doubt she had been praying about it and planning about it for months and months and months too, just like we had. And honestly, when it launched, I was like, I quit. Like I quit. I'm out. My corner of this universe is like this big comparatively. Everybody just go to her. Like this is so much better. And I just had this like, I don't know, just this, it wasn't like a jealousy, but it was definitely like this comparison and just feeling like, man, if I had that, then maybe I could make a bigger, if I had, whatever. And I came across this story. I'm going to mess it up because I am not a walking Bible concordance like some people. But I'm going to guess, and then you guys can look it up later. But I think it was like number 16. And I come across this story of this guy named Korah, and he's Moses's cousin, actually. And he is in the tribe of Levi. He's a Levite. And he's in this clan, this special clan of Levites, the clan that's like hold the Ark of the Covenant. And he just gets consumed with comparison. And what it does in his life is it starts to lead him to a place where he's not content with the call that God has given him. Instead, he craves Moses's call. And he's in a special tribe. He is in a special clan. He's been called to a special purpose, but it's just not enough. And so he starts to really crave Moses's calling. And long story short, it's like there's this rebellion. God actually swallows them up in the earth. How many of us have been swallowed by that kind of pride and that kind of comparison? And as I was reading it, I just was so convicted that my call doesn't need to be somebody else's call. And God has already put a special work in my hands. And it isn't as big and it isn't as flashy and it isn't whatever. But I can be not just content, but I can actually be enjoy the calling that God has put on me. I don't have to compare to somebody else. I don't have to crave somebody else's calling. And I think you can lay this over lots of different areas of life, whether it's, in a ministry perspective, if you look at other people's churches and, maybe the size, maybe the style, maybe they have staff, maybe they have more volunteers, whatever. And we can have these moments where we start to crave someone else's calling. You might even look at, it shows up in parenting, that shows up in so many areas of our life. But I think the shift for me when I read that passage in the Bible was getting back to embracing the call that I have and realizing how special it is. It is God's gift to me to be able to serve him in this specific way. So stop trying to have somebody else's calling. That's God's call for them. I gotta follow him in the call he has on my life. And so that comparison thing can get in our heads and in our hearts really, really easily. And when it does, it not only steals our contentment, but it robs us of the joy that we have in doing our whatever, our call. And so I think it's a really powerful thing just to get back to the root of the call on our own hearts. And I'm not even talking about a role. I actually think our call is so much bigger and better than a role in our lives. It's so much more special than that. But it's getting back to that and just enjoying the fact that God has put it on your heart and in your life. And don't worry about everybody else. Just run your race, stay in your lane, serve him with an excited, honored heart. And then some of that other stuff kind of works itself out. It doesn't mean it doesn't come back, because I sure will still battle it again. But when it does, is just to keep coming back to the special what God has asked us to do.
I think it's so important, because otherwise, even if we do have a successful ministry, we're wanting something else. And, I one of the phrases the Lord dropped in my heart many years ago was, don't let the disappointment of what isn't swallow the joy of what is. And for me, that has been being able to look at what God has entrusted to me and to be able to say, my boundaries have fallen in delightful places. We're pastoring a church of 250 in a little town in Montana. That didn't match that 15-year-old mind, how God was going to use me. But realizing, no, this is my inheritance. This is the place God has given me, and to receive it as a gift and not feel like I have to make it be anything more than what God wants it to be and partnering with him. Well, you really segued really good. Speaking of joy, enjoying the ministry into your brand new Bible study that's coming out in August. And I think this just goes so well with what we've been talking about. Tell us about it.
Well, I have a new Bible study August 1st coming out called Philippians Chasing Happy. And, I told you about my 2-year depression that I struggled with. And that was kind of the story I told for a long time. Look at this thing that God rescued me from. Look at this state that God saved me from. And for a long time, I told that story until a couple of years ago when all of a sudden one day the lights went right back off again. And I did not know how to get the light to turn back on in my life. And I found myself in that same spot again. And as the Lord pulled me back out of that for the second time, I just love the book of Philippians. There's just so many good things in there. And it's really, so many of us are chasing happy, right? We just want to be happy. We're chasing happy in our lives. Unfortunately, we're chasing the wrong kind of happy. The happy we're chasing is going to just lead to a dryness and an emptiness in our souls. But what we find is that when we start to chase holy, we actually find the happy that we've been looking for all along. And that was really my journey back out of depression again, and the lights getting turned back on again in my life. And so that's what this study is a chasing of holy, and finding the happiness that's out there. I heard somebody say that God cares more about our holiness than our happiness, like they're completely unconnected. But I actually think that they're so much more connected than that. And I think God wants us to be happy, but he also knows it will only be found in him. And so when we chase his purpose in our life and chase his joy and we chase the unity of believers and we chase Christ himself, that is when we find the happy we've been looking for. And that certainly was the case in my life. And every single day, my therapist told me in that time, she said, I just want you to do one thing every day that brings you joy, which doesn't sound like a big deal until you can't get out of bed. And then doing one thing of anything feels like a big deal. And so I just started to do one thing, and maybe that was going for a walk with my husband and talking about, what we thought God wanted for us in the future, whether that was, sitting in his word and just pouring over it. Maybe it was avocado toast, because I really like fancy avocado toast. I just do. I like a good brunch. And so but I was trying to do one thing every day that brought me joy. And as I started to pursue who Charles Spurgeon calls God the infinitely happy God, as you start to pursue the infinitely happy God, guess what you find? The happiness he has for us all along. And so my hope for this study is really just to interact with the people like me, whether it's depression, discouragement, anxiety, or just that empty feeling that we have, is to help them see the happiness that God holds out for them and how to get it.
Oh, that is so good, Lori. Because we do kind of compartmentalize. Okay, I got to be holy, but I can't imagine that'll be happy. Maybe I'll have the joy of the Lord, but happy, that might be pushing it, but yet when you go to the word and you see God's heart for us, he really does. He rejoices when we rejoice. I think of Jesus as the disciples came back and you won't believe what God did. And he's rejoicing over their rejoicing. But even just, when you think about that, there are fields of wildflowers that no human will ever see, but they're there just in case, because God loves. He loves to love us, and he loves to bless us. Oh my goodness. There's so many things I want to talk about, and we don't have time, but this has been so rich, Lori. Can you just tell us a little bit about where we can find you, and maybe just unpack the Leading and Loving ministry for those girls who are ministry women?
You can find me mostly on Instagram. That's kind of my little corner space that I hang out in. It's just at Lori Wilhite, but you can find Leading and Loving It on all the socials. You can, and leadingandlovingit.com. And really, our mission is to help women lead strong and to thrive in ministry. And we do that in a lot of different ways. We have a conference every year in October in Vegas. You should come to Vegas to a ministry conference. How often do you hear that in one sentence? And so come hang out with us. And I just believe whether you're leading at home or the office or at the church, we need each other. And so to be able to come together like that is amazing. We have coaching groups and cohorts and tons of free resources and lots of things like that there. So you can find out all of that information, but we would love to just come alongside you, encourage you, help you connect with a lot of awesome women in ministry and kind of build your own girl gang. Ministry can be pretty isolating, so to have some women in your corner is a really special treat. So if we can serve you, then please hop over to our website and let us know. We would love to connect with you.
Yeah, and be sure to check out Lori's other books and Bible studies because you've got so much wonderful stuff. Well, I was just thinking of, that's kind of stepping out of the darkness and or having the Lord even kind of give you little breadcrumbs to help lead you out of the dark. And I love that idea of one thing each day that brings you joy. But I was wondering, is there maybe, I don't know why I feel this, but like just one or two other things that you might share that was part of that healing process and coming back to life?
Well, I will say, I don't think we can say enough the importance of talking to someone when you need it. Sometimes I feel like, especially in Christian circles, especially in leadership circles, we somehow feel like that's weak, or I don't know, we shouldn't do it, or we can't afford it. And not even, maybe it's you can't afford it financially, but maybe it's I can't afford the gossip. I can't afford people seeing me in the waiting room. I can't afford like whatever. And I just think for when you're in a state that I was in, or if your marriage is really struggling, or your kids are making choices that are breaking your heart, the truth is maybe we can't afford not to help and seek some counsel. There's so many great Christian therapists and counselors out there, and I am a big advocate for getting the help that you need and talking to someone who can give you a different perspective and a biblical perspective, and helping kind of retrain some thought patterns that are going on in our minds. And so if that's you, I just think, don't be afraid. I just got DM'd by somebody yesterday. Do you think it's okay if I go to counseling? I'm like, yes, please. I'll help you find one right now. And so don't be afraid of that. I think the Lord often to me speaks through other people and friends, my husband, my therapist, all of it. So get that help if you need it. That was really key for me. And then I really just think part of the joy of like Philippians 4, when you look at Philippians 4, it really talks about the peace of God in you and the God of peace with you. And engaging in those two things, like prayer leads us to like the peace of God being inside us. But then also there's an ability when we like really kind of capture our thoughts and work on that kind of area of our lives, that the God of peace is with you. And I do think we need both of those things. We need God who is peace with us, and then we need the peace of God inside us as well. And so kind of going on a journey of engaging with that peace of God really does settle your spirit and settle my mind is very imaginative. I can write full untrue stories in my head, in my imagination, about all the things. And so it's really grabbing hold of all of that and then letting God's peace be in us and with us. And that is really what transforms us.
Praise God. Yes. That's been my experience as well. But I have this curiosity that wants to know, how do we do that, Lori? How do I access that peace? What did it look like for you?
Well, like I said, often my mind does kind of get the best of me. It can, if I have a negative interaction with someone, or I hear them talking about our family, I can create an entire storyline in my head, whether it's true or not. And so much of I used to, in my pre-ministry life, in my way back in the day, I used to be a preschool teacher. We would sit on the carpet and we'd sit down, we would get ready to learn our letters or whatever, and we would all get out our thinking caps and we would put them on and we would dial in all the knobs and get our brains focused on what we needed to get focused on so we could do what we were supposed to do. And I feel like as adults, we need to put our thinking caps back on a little bit and turn the knobs and get our minds focused on what they need to be focused on so we can do what God has asked us to do. And so much of that is really just found in His Word. It's just found in His Word. And the deeper, this is why I love writing Bible studies. I love books and I love all the other things. But the reason why I love writing Bible studies is because that has been the transformative thing in my life, is going from reading for a few minutes. And that's a beautiful thing that everybody should read devotionally, but also taking it to a deeper kind of level and engaging with God's Word with some depth, that really, really allowed that kind of thought transformation to start to take place. And as it did, that's when you start to really be able to engage with God's peace in your life.
Ooh, I think that's really true, because I know for me, so often I would read the Word because I was supposed to read the Word, but it was the same thing for me starting to teach ladies Bible study, when you had to kind of like go a little bit deeper, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh my goodness, there's so much more, especially when we study the Word with the Holy Spirit, and it's
Right.
not just check off the list, but we're like living in some of the verses and asking God questions about it. And that really, yeah, the verse God's used so often in my life is 2 Corinthians 10:4 and 5, about tearing down strongholds and demolishing arguments. But there's one version that says, and every lofty opinion that exalts itself against the knowledge of God. And so for me, it's even like, okay, wait a minute, where is this thought going to take me? Is it going to take me away from the Lord or to the Lord? How is this thought, this fear, this feeling? I was just laughing when you said I make up all sorts of stories. I've often thought, have you noticed none of us ever come up with the best case scenario? No, it's always it's always the worst case scenario. And then we really almost believe that's the reality, rather than going, no, that's a story that I'm telling myself in the mind. So what do you say? What is your story, Lord? So, so good. You guys have got to check out Lori's stuff. But as we go, would you just pray over us? I love your heart for Jesus, and I love your heart for His women.
I would love to pray. Jesus, we're so thankful. God, we're so thankful. You could choose anybody to work through, God, but you choose us. And what an honor that is. Thank you. Thank you for the opportunities that you set before us. Thank you for the calling that you've placed on our hearts and in our lives. Thank you for the joy that you've set before us, God. I just pray that as we continue to pursue whatever you've planted in our hearts, that we do it finding our freedom in you, finding our strength in you, and finding our joy in you. We love you so much. Amen.
Amen.